Okay, so usual format, names, pronouns, and the icebreaker, which for today will be, since our book is so environmentally focused, what is one thing you do to care for the environment? And of course, I will go first. My name is Jonathan. My pronouns are he, him. Uh, I would say I do a fair amount of things to care for the environment. Obviously, I recycle as every human being should. Um, I was in school, like elementary school, during the big reduce, reuse, recycle craze. So like I think of that every single time I have like aluminum or cardboard or plastic. So that's one thing. I also am an avid public transit rider. I guess you could say it's because I cannot drive, but even outside of that, I do take it to help the environment. And I also repurpose a lot of things. I make a lot of my own stuff. A lot of the furniture in my house is thrifted or secondhand or things I made myself. A lot of my clothes are thrifted or clothes that I made myself. Um, I'm trying to get myself to the point to where I can make my own yarn and my own fabric. I haven't gotten there yet, but one day I will be doing that too. So, okay, who wants to go next?
I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Saul. I use he, him pronouns. Great question. I love the environment. I'm actually getting my master's in environmental policy. I'm hoping to like work in that field in the future. Um, I also recycle. I also don't have a car and I do know how to drive. But I do it for the environmental like benefits of that, but also because of how much you have to pay to have a car. I don't want to work to have a car and then have a car to go to work, you know? Um, so yeah, not the I mostly just travel on my bike because the city that I live in doesn't have the greatest transportation, like public transportation. I also do have my own garden, so I love growing little veggies, and then I also help run a small urban farm. And we do a lot of things around like permaculture and how to grow drought tolerant veggies, stuff like that. That helps mostly the soil. Um, and I think maybe that's it. Yeah, but yeah, doing everything that I can. Oh yeah, also about like not buying a lot of new clothes or repurposing my clothes kind of go through cycles where I'll wear them until it's not appropriate to wear them to like work or stuff, and then they transition to either, my sleeping clothes or my gardening clothes. So giving them new life as they kind of get older and really try to wear them on until I cannot wear them anymore. Um, yeah, but love the environment. Super thankful to be have the opportunity to like care for it and be part of some solutions.
Um, I'll go next. Hello, everybody. My name is Grace, and my pronouns are they, them. I actually have a bachelor's degree in geology and a master's in geology, but I emphasized in like groundwater and environmental studies. So I'm a hydrologist and kind of like a geochemist by trade. And I love picking up trash. So I really like doing projects. When I used to work for the federal government up until this year, um, we would do like stream restoration projects, or I would make sure that any projects that were done had really good mitigation measures in place. So putting like netting up on streams or making sure that machinery had to use like certain bridges in order to cross streams and things like that. And currently I work in the environment for a mine. So I make sure that the water stays on site or it's treated and it doesn't get out into the environment, which is really great. Um, Personally, because we're in a small community, they don't recycle, but it's really fun. It's called Recyclops. And so I pay for glass and number one and two plastics and aluminum and cardboard recycling. Um, And so I have to pay for that extra, but I think that it's really important. And so they'll pick up my recycling once every 2 weeks. And I have a garden in the back, and we've been planting um, native plants. And what's really, really fun is because we have water features and native plants and like desert milkweeds, you start seeing all these different life in your backyard, like all these different types of bugs that are thriving. I also compost, and so we have a compost in the back, and we use that soil for our gardens. And the future, I really want to start collecting rainwater. Um, and I could go on about rainwater collection and different things that we've learned about rainwater collection and how to make sure that it's safe. Because if you live in a little mining community, sometimes stuff on your roof that gets in the rainwater is not good. So you have to have actually a filter on your rainwater barrels and stuff. But anyway, and I pick up trash anywhere I can. So anytime I'm out in a park and if I see trash on the ground, I will pick up as much as I can and throw it away. So, because I think a little bit goes a long way. So I am very pro environment for sure, because it gives us a lot.
Well, I feel very lacking in this area. My name is Benita. I go by pronouns she, her. And I have to say, I don't do enough. I do recycle where I can. Of course, I was just telling the story about driving. Where I live is very car dependent, and I wouldn't even know what to do with myself if I didn't have my car. So I'm learning a lot listening to you all, and I am very interested about the rainwater because I was actually thinking about that where my parents currently live. They're kind of in a really rural area. But yeah, I know I don't do enough, and I like I said, the most I do is recycling, and I don't, which I'm not I don't, I'm not a person that goes out and buy a whole bunch of clothes or anything like that anyway. But I never thought about it in this sense, and I do the recycle thing, like like I'll like something I wore for work, I don't don't wear it for work anymore. I'll okay, I'll just wear this at home, or I go wear it to sleep. So yeah, so that's listening to you all is very interesting. I really do. Like I said, I'm lacking obviously, but I do care about the environment. I absolutely do, but I know I don't do enough.
And Sierra, I believe that leaves you if you're able to unmute, if you want to share. Okay. Perhaps Sierra stepped away. Hopefully she can join us later
In
on.
the
She
chat.
said,
Oh,
I'm here.
Oh,
I
but
couldn't
she
oh,
unmute my
okay.
phone. I'm so sorry.
No, it's
Hi,
okay.
I'm Sierra. I definitely go by she, her. Now, listen, you guys are knocking it out of the water in regards to the environment because I have to be honest. I'm not that great. I think I contribute in regards to, I do my best in regards to trying to pick up trash. I would definitely say I'm a stickler for that. Like, definitely in my neighborhood, I'm living inside of an apartment. So I definitely try to keep the neighborhood clean and things like that. In regards to maybe like purchasing plastic bags, like I have a thing for, plastic bags. I don't purchase those too much. And I definitely do recycle. I do have a recycling company that comes and pick up, like recycled goods every single day for my community. But in regards to that, like I definitely, would need to contribute a little bit more. You guys are definitely motivating me to say maybe Sierra, you need to do a little bit more in regards to the environment. But something that I would really love to get more into in regards to the environment, I would say I would love to like start gardening, maybe like planting my own fruits, vegetables, things of that nature. But yeah, I think that would be it for me.
Nice. Well, I guess I should admit that I did ask this question, kind of remembering that you, Saul, and you, Grace, both work in environmental studies. So I was really curious to hear what you guys had to say, but I do love to hear that you all do things to help the environment. And of course, we all recycle, as all human beings should. That's number one. And Grace, it's funny you mentioned the rainwater collector. I'm starting that myself. I have to admit, it confuses the hell out of me. How to properly filter the water, how to keep gnats and mosquitoes out of the water. I'll also admit I'm doing it primarily to save on my water bill because I just got my new one and it's a little bit too high because I am starting my own garden as well. But yeah, yeah. And I'm super excited to hear if Saul or Vanita, if you guys start gardens, let me know. I gotta see what you guys are up to. Uh, okay, so let's get into it. Oh, it just became legal in your city. I know in some cities it is illegal to collect rainwater, which confuses me, but good for you. That just became legal.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. I like even when I connect it to like the book, but I'll save it for later.
and there are some questions that I do have for you, Saul and Grace, about the environment in this book, but we will get there. Okay, I'll start us off with asking, what did you all think of the book, The Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimaline?
I I'll say that I was thinking the same thing. A lot of people commented in Discord. It was words. Um, I didn't find myself really liking it or disliking it. It was kind of it was a story, and I read it and I said, okay, that's what happened. I didn't even feel like, oh, I want to read the other books of the series. It was kind of like, oh, great, Megan and his husband got together. I'm so glad. That was kind of like how it was. So I didn't feel anything about it, honestly. I couldn't even really connect to any of the characters. Some characters I wanted to know more about their story. And honestly, Frenchie was not one of them. But that's that's pretty much how I felt about the book.
Yeah, I feel like parts of it were super good, and then I was it's like I shouldn't have felt bored, but so when I did get bored, I would listen to the audio book, and that helped a ton. So I think a part of it was I don't know. I was happy with the ending. I was super happy with the ending because it wasn't a bury your gays situation. And I was so shocked about that. I was just absolutely like, oh my God, what? And I feel like the story should have been about Mig instead of Frenchie. I didn't care about Frenchie at all. And then when he was doing his whole like jealous teenager stuff, I was like, ugh, yeah, and yeah, so I'm glad it was as short as it was because if it was longer, I think I would have had a really hard time finishing it. Um, and I feel like it was an idea of a book and it should have been way more fleshed out. Um, because I really loved the concept, and every time we got to a side story that was super interesting, then we just were like moved on by like a couple months. So I gave it a higher rating because I really liked it in theory. Um, but I wish it was different.
I very much liked the book. I really liked the concept of the book. And I do agree at some points it was a little bit like it wasn't the most exciting book all the time. But I think it was really impactful to me because I consistently made the connections between like the struggle that the characters were having and the historical struggle that indigenous people have had and continue to have. So that I think like propelled the story for me of being able to like connect it. And maybe because I was also, traveling through the Southwest, that these connections were even like more in my face than in if I had been somewhere else. So I really did like the book. I did definitely though at times I think it's a like young adult novel and it very much feels YA at some points, particularly with Frenchie and like his his teenage feelings. So I definitely at times I was very frustrated with him and with some of the other characters as well. But I think like the impact for me of like indigenous people losing their language and their land, um like that to me I really connected with, and it like I cried multiple times reading the book. So I think that that was really strong for me.
Hi guys. So what I would say my perspective of the book is I'm still kind of trying to figure it out. I initially started, I read the book once and I just read it and then I went over and I listened to it, the Audible. Um, and I still quite don't know how I feel about the book. Um, I did enjoy the language that they used in the book. I did enjoy that part. Um, I just still don't quite know because I wish I could hear more about maybe them going a little bit more into detail about the dreams, I guess maybe, because it's like they were searching for this marrow, but I felt like they didn't go into detail as to what the dreams could have possibly been used for. Like they didn't go into detail in regards to the dream, which I felt like, which was the moral of the book. It's like they did all of these things, but we didn't get much detail as to why. Or just, I would love to have just like got a little bit of more of Frenchie's dream. And I did like um, Mead as well. I don't know. I don't know. I guess overall in the end, I felt like were they still looking for the marrow? I was a little confused because at that point it was like they were looking for Minerva, but then it's like they found her. I don't know. I'm just a little confused, I guess I'm gonna say. I gave the book a 7, and I'm gonna just leave it there.
Okay. So I'll start off by saying if you've been to these meetings before, you probably understand I do not tend to like YA novels. So that's a given. Although obviously I try to give every single book a fair shake because I know every author has different abilities. But I've also come to realize about myself, I don't tend to like dystopian novels either. When I was young, although the Hunger Games, Divergent, all that stuff, those were like really, really huge when I was in middle school. I never liked any of that stuff. So imagine how I feel about a YA novel that is also dystopian. I obviously didn't like it. Um, as always, I have a list of pros and cons. I will first give pros just to be nice to the author because I could tell that she really was trying to do something cool. Um, First, I will say, like you all said, very, very cool concept, but in my personal opinion, I do not think the concept was fleshed out enough. I think in order for me to buy into any sort of fantasy or dystopian or alternate universe, my primary thing that I need is information. And I think this book lacked a lot of information. Just like Sierra just got done saying, I think I was confused for most of it. Like, what is going on here? What are we doing? Uh, it just required a lot more detail for me. Um, so yeah, there's that. Um, I will say I really do appreciate the parallels that this story makes, whether it's intentional or not, from this fantasy dystopian universe the book takes place in, and of course, our real world. It was definitely strange to read the book and then hearing about families being separated, people being displaced, parents being taken from their children, and then turning on the morning news and hearing about people being disappeared. So yeah, that's a very easy connection. I really appreciated that. I also really appreciate, I guess you would call it, how anti-capitalist the book feels to me. Um, as we get more moments of Frenchie, I'm sorry, not Frenchie, of the group caring for Minerva, their elder, and Riri, their like child in the group, um, it all felt very anti-capitalist to me because I'm thinking about our society, our capitalist society. We oftentimes value each other based on how much we can work and how much we can physically contribute to a community, to a city, the government, whatever. And both the elderly and the children oftentimes can't really do much. So they're kind of pushed to the side, they're looked at as inconveniences. But in this book, both the elder and the child are actually revered. Like the group, regardless of their ages, do respect Riri and Minerva. So I loved that. And then we even get a moment later in the story where we lose both Riri and Minerva, which we will obviously talk about later. But Frenchie says something like, we can now travel a lot faster and with a lot more stealth because we do not have these, people who really couldn't do much for themselves. But we would trade all of that for the chance to be able to have them again. So yeah, I liked all of that. But of course, I have to get to the cons. First of all, Frenchie is the most boring character in the entire group. And like I mentioned in the Discord when I first started the book, I found myself continually questioning, why is he our main character? Why? He does nothing. He's just kind of there. He doesn't really talk to anyone, doesn't have any really interesting information. When we first meet him in the beginning of the book, I was intrigued. I do think starting off with him losing his brother was pretty cool. It kind of dropped us into the action very quickly. Great. But then we lose that after he finds the group. It's like, okay, now what? Um, so yeah, that's one thing. I think it was Grace. You mentioned that you kind of wish that Meeg was our main character. I have to agree. I think the story would have benefited a lot in terms of information being given to us if our main character was someone who had been to the schools, had been taken, and then made it out, because he obviously knows a hell of a lot more than anyone else who wasn't in the schools. Oh, there's Arian. Just a second. So yeah, there's that. Um, Second con, for a book to be centered around dreams and people losing the ability to dream, we rarely ever talk about dreams. It would have made a lot more sense to me if when we spend time with our group, they actually talk about their dreams. It would have also made more sense if the dreams were important in some kind of way. Perhaps the dreams give them answers to like how to fix the world, how to solve the climate crisis. But we only talk about Frenchie's dreams, I believe, twice, I think. And he only dreams about his parents. So yeah, I didn't really get that. Also, again, the importance of dreams in this universe didn't really make much sense to me. Yes, I understand that ornithology is a study that we do have. I understand that ornithologists believe that dreams are very important, but the average of us don't really put much stock into our dreams. Um, so for this entire world to kind of tailspin into chaos over people losing the ability to dream is kind of odd to me. Uh, yeah. And lastly, my con was it felt like the book was, although I don't think it's ever explicitly stated that the recruiters are all white people, but it seemed like the book was very white versus indigenous. And of course, we know the world has a lot of other people who are not white and also not indigenous. So I found myself questioning, where are they? What are they up to? Of course, in terms of people who are benefiting from the dreams being taken from the indigenous people, uh, they potentially could be of any racial group. But I would imagine it would probably only be the rich, because I'd imagine the dreams wouldn't come at a cheap price. So what about folks who can't afford to purchase these dreams or benefit from these dreams being taken? What happens to them? Um, which I guess leads me to my other point. I think the book would have been a hell of a lot better if it was told in an omniscient point of view, where we're getting several different perspectives, as opposed to just focusing on one character that unfortunately doesn't really know much. But yeah, I could say more. I'll leave it there in the nature of time. Okay. And welcome in, Arian. We're just talking about our general thoughts in the book. If you have any you want to share.
Honestly, I think we'll touch on it. Like the highlight of the book for me was Isaac and what's his name? Migwan. But anyway, yeah.
Okay. I guess we can talk about, usually we talk about our main characters, but we only really have one. So, general thoughts on Frenchie as a character outside of what we've already said.
I, as I said, I really didn't. It's interesting when you said that you like being dropped right in the beginning, this action part. And I think that's where I got lost right there, because this incident happens. They're trying, him and his brother Mitch are trying to, they're going to share this bag of Doritos, and they talk about the hole in his teeth, and you know, but I didn't connect to either character. And it was kind of like, even when Mitch, gave the distraction so he could get away, so Frenchie could get away, I was just kind of like, well, yeah, that's what I would do as an older sister. I would do that to make sure my siblings or my family was there. I would probably do that, but I just didn't connect to him, and it was kind of like, I will say I did get a little bit of I did get a little bit of, I don't know if joy is the right word, but I say a little bit of happiness watching this. That even in this, you know, um, dystopian world, the normal teenage things still happen. Here's this teenage boy liking this girl, and then he sees this girl liking or interacting with, this other young man. So that was kind of like, oh, those things still happen. So yeah, like I said, I just I really feel like I was just, kind of, even though I was reading it, I felt like I was just kind of watching the story happen without really having any type of real reactions to any of it.
Yeah, I think why Frenchie? That's so, I wish he, like, I think it was you, Jonathan, who said that he didn't really interact with anybody. And it was almost like an omniscient view, but in the eyeballs of somebody else almost. And so I felt like we lost a lot of the story because of that. And maybe that was the point by the authors, just like maybe from a teenager's perspective and just being confused all the time and not really understanding what's going on and having to rely on your elders to give you stories. And if you don't have those stories, you are confused, and that might have been purposeful. And boring people have to go through dystopian hellscapes too. So maybe that was also one of the bigger reasons for Frenchie is that so everyone can feel like, they're in the story. But yeah, it was just I don't feel like I got to know Frenchie at all. I feel like Frenchie was just telling me things, and maybe Frenchie didn't know himself either. Um, and when he said that, oh, I think I've changed, after he, like killed one of the after he killed one of the recruiters, or like the ones that like betrayed them, and then Riri died. I was like, I changed how? You're just more boring. I mean, that would change people, but we just never really got past the surface, I think, with Frenchie. And so that's kind of how I feel about Frenchie as a character, is that he was just a typical teenager.
To me, maybe the intention was not that Frenchie was, right, obviously a main character, but through being able to tell other people's coming to stories, maybe the author was really trying to spread that narrative across multiple people, to not necessarily place him as like the guiding storyline, but rather just a part of the bigger puzzle. Because that's kind of how I saw it, that I wasn't just focused on Frenchie, because he was frustrating as a teenager, but that it was kind of about the collective, which I think again like falls back on kind of this like indigenous path forward of like it's not about the individual but about the collective of all, which is later, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, why I was also so frustrated at the very end when Rose decided to leave. I was like, why would you leave? Thankfully, hopefully, like she now after the whole everything happens, they'll decided to stay. But that seemed very like anti what they were trying to achieve. And again, they're teenagers and she was grieving, and so this whole thing. But yeah, it more seemed to me like the story was about the collective, like the group as a whole, rather than just about Frenchie.
Okay, my opinion of Frenchie. He was a typical teenager, I would say. I did like how he started off, like I would say maybe um a little bit fearful or uncertain. And then I feel like as the book kind of progressed, you see him coming into more of like a stronger leader, more I guess more so like Mig's shadow, I would say more so. So I did, like I did enjoy his growth throughout the book. However, I just wish that maybe they could have took turns, maybe, telling their stories, maybe. I was more interested in maybe Web's, story, more so Frenchie, if I'm being completely honest. But Frenchie, I'm not gonna say, I don't have anything bad to say about him. I would say I enjoyed, him growing into maybe a young man, a young adult throughout the course of the book, I would say.
Um, so I I think I agree with um Grace that Frenchie was kind of boring. I think Jonathan shares the same sentiment. I feel like there could have been like so many more avenues they could have leaned into more, or maybe I just didn't really feel it, but I feel like they could have leaned more into him being like a big brother figure to Riri a bit more because um yeah, he was so devastated with Riri getting got, but I didn't really feel like the relationship was that fleshed out. Or any of his relationships for that matter. Uh, es- Especially with Rose. Like I did anyway, yeah, I really can't pinpoint anything specific about him from the start to end changing aside from him getting older. And that was like that kind of put me off because he was like, "Oh, I'm changing." Yeah. But yeah, he was just there.
Yeah, like I've said several times now, Frenchie's boring. Um, but I like what you said, Soul. I do agree that perhaps the reason why our author chose to make Frenchie our main character is because Frenchie, being so young, being so, I guess you could say, naive, knowing so little, he feels like a spectator to the much larger story that is at play here. And I guess that kind of helps us be immersed in the story because we are simply spectators as we are reading. Um, but yeah, I mean, can't really feel much for this character, unfortunately, outside of feeling bored because I think it was you, Grace, who mentioned like we don't really connect with him very much because he knows so little, we know so little about him, he knows so little about himself. Um, so yeah, unfortunately, this is the character we are stuck with. Um, okay, now I'm curious how, if at all, do you believe that this world the book takes place in mirrors our own?
I don't know if that's a trick question or not. Yes, I think the greater meaning behind the book of people wanting something that other people have is definitely, that's definitely the world we live in. Um, and again, it was like we were talking about. I feel like the missing piece of why is the dreaming so important? Because as I said in my comment, as a person who loves to fall asleep and not dream at all, I was like, why are they important? I don't understand. But I did get the whole thing of having a group of people totally wanting something others had. So yes, absolutely, think it does mirror our own, and having um, people adapt and still fight against, still have resistance against this and not just be okay, where this is just how it is and we're just going to fall to this. So I really got all of that. And that's what I think I was trying to hold on to as I was reading through the book and not trying to focus on the fact that I really wasn't connecting to a lot of the characters, or I wanted to hear more about other people than really Frenchie himself. Um, so yeah, I definitely believe it does mirror our
I would say it definitely mirrors our world today. And I would say it connects in themes of like climate change, racism, ongoing, the impact of oppression, and just while still people are still trying to just be resilient and all of those things, I would say. Um, yeah, so that's what I would definitely say mostly about it. I would say it definitely, mimics today's society, today's world, based off of, I would say, mostly racism, if I'm gonna have to be completely honest. And I'm gonna just leave it there.
Yeah, to me, it did have a lot of like similarities or reflections of today's world. Like first starting with like climate change and the environment, how there's already people who are climate refugees and have had to flee their homes because of rising sea levels and just, poor land. So definitely that part of it. And I think it also, right, it's very reflective of like the history that indigenous people have had, and specifically with the schools, right, being representative of the residential schools that indigenous people were forced into. And I think I wish that I agree with all of you. I wish that the story had more to say about like what about the dreams itself and how they were utilizing the dreams. But I do think that like it was a bigger, just like metaphorical, like ability to dream maybe, and like that ability to hope. Because I do think that a lot of the times how the oppressors win is by making people not be able to hope anymore and really getting people to lose their ability to even dream of a better world. So I do think that that had like a big thing, right? Of like comparing that to the residential schools that indigenous people did have to go to where, you know, they cut their hair, they didn't let them speak their language, they murdered them. I do think that that was a really big comparison. And I think that like maybe that was the big comparison that the author was trying to make of like, they're stealing our dreams, they're stealing like the youth and the hope for the future. That I did see that definite reflection between them. But I did wish that there was like more said about like, are people then like getting the bone marrow injected? Like I wish there was like just more of that. I also like one of the things that I can't remember who said this, maybe it was Johnathan, that the world did seem very much like it was just like white people against indigenous people. And maybe that was because of, I mean, I've never been to Canada, so maybe that's who lives in Canada, like the majority of people that live in Canada, and maybe there's not a lot of diversity beyond that. But one of the things that I wish or maybe hope that it's not reflective of the world is that all the POC that maybe were mentioned did seem to also be traitors. And I hope that that's not the case in the real world. Obviously, at the end, it seemed like there was some people that were helping with the movement and like helping indigenous people. But I do hope that that is not the world that we live in and maybe the future that we will live in, that I hope that, you know, as people of color, we can come together and white people too against oppressors. I really do hope that that's not a future that will be taken.
Yeah, I really agree with everyone, and working closely with indigenous peoples, because I also teach intro to geology at an indigenous college in the springtime. I feel like this book resonated with me a little bit more because just being immersed in with, you know, the Apache peoples and how a lot of their culture was really like ripped from them, and having to start from the bottom up with also and this is where this author is coming from, right? Is that, you know, I've kind of read a little bit of her bio about how, you know, she was sent to make sure that she like was ingrained like in her culture before it was lost. And so I think every single thing in this book, besides the dystopian aspect of it, of like the bone marrow and the dreams, has already happened. You know, we are destroying our water, you know, we can't drink money, but we're pumping water at a rate that's completely unsustainable. And because of the ideas of capital, we're building houses in areas that shouldn't have homes. And so you're going to have climate refugees. Who's it going to affect the most? People who are poor. And so I really wish the author would have included more of like a classism aspect in it, because like who is getting the dream marrow? It's like probably not everybody. It's probably like the rich people. And you know, and I think it's really important, like the white vans are being stolen. So indigenous peoples were stolen from their homes, stolen from their lands, sent to these schools. And one thing that really stood out to me, which I wish was a little bit more fleshed out in the book, was when they said, oh, this is our guy on the inside, he was wearing priest robes. And so as we know, like whenever, you know, like Spain and like Britain, when they came over here and, you know, they made missions, they enslaved indigenous peoples, they put them in missions and made them build these missions. They were mostly Catholic priests. And so there's like also this Indigenous history of harm. So I was curious. I'm like, okay, was it the Catholic Church that is starting these schools again? And again, they also mentioned the people going potentially volunteering for medical trials, right? And as we know, in medicine, people have experimented on unwilling people, mostly it's people of color. So I think that the book is completely based in reality and the reality of things to come. And I felt like maybe I wish it was, fleshed out more, but dreams, right? So taking people's dreams, so taking people's identities away from them, not letting them have their indigenous names, not letting them have their languages. And so like when Frenchie like heard part of like the language and how much like he clinged on to it, and how everyone clinged on to it, whenever they heard drums, whenever they had sweetgrass, I think those things are really important. And so it's like keeping on to the hope of like where you come from. Um, that's where I kind of thought they were stealing our dreams because we are the only people that still had hope and were connected to nature. And then everyone was so divested from nature and they couldn't dream anymore. It was driving them crazy. So I think that's kind of the allegory the author was trying to go with. And that's why I feel like I liked the book a lot more in that regard, because a lot of the stories that were being told kind of hit closer to home, just being so close to, the San Carlos Apache reservation and working with people and seeing the struggle of trying to just have any semblance of their heritage in very recent modern history. Like that reservation wasn't established, the one that's by my home, until like 1876 or something like that. And so it's people's remember their grandmother's stories that they were telling me about having to go to the reservation or hiding to try not to get captured, to have to go to the reservation. So so yeah, I think this book is 100% vested in reality. I wish that we would have just a little bit more precision, I think, with it would have been great.
Okay, real to everything that y'all said. Um, Pretty much like global warming and how the story is inspired by history. Um, I feel like there was an aspect of trying to get in touch with or like learn more about culture and learn a language when you're like when everything is kind of so spread out or far away. Since you're not really um you don't really get to interact much with it since you're already or since you're always moving around in that aspect. I don't know if I'm making sense, but how Frenchie held um the languages or the dialects so dear to him or with such reverence. I really like that aspect. And how they treated it with such importance. Uh, but aside from that, yeah, real.
Yeah, I think this book literally holds up like a mirror to our current society. Like a lot of you have said, everything that's happened in this book, obviously outside of the dystopian dream stealing element, has already happened. This book does reflect our past, but I would also say it reflects our future too. I mean, the schools in the book obviously are meant to represent, like Saul said, residential schools, but I would also say one could draw the connection between these schools to AI data centers that are currently being built. I mean, they're equally as harmful for the environment. Uh, we only have so much time to talk about that because this meeting could be hours if we were to open the conversation to AI. But I'll just use a blanket statement: never use AI. It is actively destroying our environment, and it is, of course, affecting primarily lower income individuals, and a lot of those individuals being Black individuals. So don't use AI. But yeah, genocide, climate change, all the things. It's totally spot on. Okay, now this question is more so for our two environmental science besties here, Saul and Grace, but anyone can obviously answer. I'm curious what you two make of the natural disasters in this book and the consequences of climate change. Does that make any sense to you guys?
It does. Yeah, Saul, do you want to go first?
You want to go first, Grace?
Okay. Yeah, just so I've been listening to a book with my partner called Cadillac Desert. I highly recommend this book. It's about there's no water in the West and it's completely unsustainable. And the only reason we really have these dams and these water projects and that LA exists at all is because of just this rampant dewatering and this system that was built just for westward expansion. And it's a fascinating book. It's a really good listen, honestly, a listen, but a read. And the amount of water that we're pumping from like the Colorado in and of itself is not making it to Mexico really anymore. And so the delta that's down there, like this drying is, like drying up. We dammed part of the Colorado. And so this sediment flushing that it usually has isn't there anymore. And oh, Cadillac. I can never spell Cadillac. Desert. Cadillac Desert. For some reason, Cadillac is one of those words that my brain doesn't think it should be spelled that way. And also just the pollution of our waterways. And so, especially in the West, the more water that you use, and for these farmlands, it actually makes it more saline. And so, as we know, more saline water causes a whole bunch of issues, and then the water can't be reused because it's too salty. And not only on top of that, but then all of our infrastructure, right? So concrete is hydrophobic. So it's just like runoff, and you have all these pollutants by these watersheds and wildfires. And so I could go on, but having all the waters be completely polluted, I unfortunately could see that in our future, especially in the West, just because of all of we just don't have any good laws in place, or the ones that we were starting to get are now being rescinded just because of money. And you can't drink money and you can't eat money. And if you run out of water, you're going to run out of farms. And if you run out of farms, you're going to run out of food. And if you run out of food, you're not going to be able to feed anybody. Um, we just had a natural disaster in my community, and that natural disaster literally is because of climate change. We had 3.7 inches of rain within 45 minutes, essentially. And so the soil can't withstand that. And so it was just all runoff. And it's going to affect rural communities the most because those rural communities are old and don't have the infrastructure. And it just it harms a lot of people. On top of that, if we try to do fracking, and when we do any Arctic drilling, unfortunately, methane's a worse greenhouse gas than CO2. When the Arctic starts to melt, it actually holds a lot of methane out of the carbon cycle. So I could see, yeah, it just be either raining all the time or just completely dry in certain places. And then that causing people needing to flee their homes, right? So a lot of people maybe not have flood insurance, or it's too expensive, or some insurance companies pulling out of areas because it's too expensive for natural disaster relief, and the list can go on. A lot of good things that we've done. in history to prevent these things, but unfortunately, sometimes capitalists prefer money over reality, and these environmental measures have to be put in place to prevent the most harm coming to the most vulnerable populations, and that's like across the world too. So I could probably have a conversation about this for hours. For hours. Lucky for us, geology is deep time. So the Earth is, 4.5 billion years old, and humans have been around for, evolutionary chain like about 10 million years. So, the Earth will be fine. The Earth's got about another 2 billion years left in her with the sun. But I worry about the human beings that are here and how we will survive and make it, because the Earth always has a way of replenishing itself. So we've been through 5 mass extinction events in evolutionary geological history. And so, and 95% of all life has been wiped out, and life comes back every time. So hopefully that will also give people a little bit of hope during a unprecedented time in human history.
Yeah, I don't have much to add about like the environmental impacts that have already happened. I think that they did awesome at talking about a lot of the things. I think one of the things that like in my master's program has become more and more obvious is that the solutions are out there. It's simply greed that's keeping a lot of these solutions from actually being put forth. For example, one of my classes, core classes within my program, was in an environmental economics class, and I did not want to take it because I don't care about economics. And the biggest thing that I took from that class was that some people really won't care about nature unless they can put a money value attached to it. And that's not just speaking about corporations, but really everyday people don't really see the value of maybe there's one small insect because they don't see how it connects to really the broader health of the world unless they can see, right, well, if this insect goes away, then that means that these crops will fail and this will cost this much money for the agricultural industry, right? And then people are like, oh, well, we have to save the insect now. Once they are able to
So your mic's cutting out.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. You're sharing a lot of great things, but we can't hear you.
No, can you hear me now? Sorry, I'm on my way to a concert, so my internet might not be the best. Can you
I
hear
can hear
me?
you a little better now.
Yeah, much
Okay.
better.
Okay, great. I was talking just about how there's also, right, at the same time, that can also be negative to place value on nature, because then other people can say, okay, well, if it's only worth this much, then let's destroy it because we'll get more money out of the destruction of it. So also a double-edged sword in all of that. And then I think another positive, right now I'm taking a renewable energy class, and have learned that in the past maybe year or couple of years, renewable energy like solar and wind has increased more than all fossil fuel energy combined. So it just shows that our energy globally is leaning more towards renewable energy now, which is really great to see. So I thought that was really cool too. And again, another positive. But on top of that, one of the reasons why of this increase is not because people suddenly care more about the environment. It's just simply because it's safer now to make renewable energy than it was in the past. So again, like everything that we're doing is really money based. So I think that like as long as we keep that theme of like money is more important and we can only focus on the environment if it makes environmental or if it makes economic sense, I think it will just continue to like ruin the environment. Yeah, so definitely like this, a world that we read about seems very real to me. Because one, people don't care about the environment, or even right, it seems like in this in the book world, it still didn't seem like people were doing anything to make the water better or like really do anything to make the environment better. They were just focused on stealing indigenous people, like that was their focus. They didn't care about like, oh, maybe if we clean the waters, the world will be better. They're like, no, maybe let's just focus on this other thing that is just like a band-aid on the real issue that's going
on. Nice. Thank you guys for that. If it's not obvious, I am way out of my element with that conversation, but you guys definitely handled it. In short, I'll just say, care for your environment. We only have one planet. Be kind to her. Don't use AI. And that's it. That's all I can say. Okay. I'm curious, why is it that you believe that everyone lost the inability, or to say lost the ability to dream, except for the indigenous people? Why do you think that is?
I think so. I was thinking about this and I really like that. I forgot who brought it up, but like what's going on with the other people of color in this book? Because I feel like it is predominantly like white people and indigenous people. And I would say a lot of it is because whiteness precludes culture and it you have to be the same. And so it was invented to just oppress. And so you're kind of steeped in whiteness, which then I don't think gives you a culture or the ability to dream. So what I'm assuming is going on is that you're just the folks in this book probably lost the ability to dream. And I'm assuming it's white people only that lost the ability to dream was because they um the there's no culture there anymore. It's all oneness and sameness. You have to be exactly the same, act exactly the same, be white, you can't know anything about your own personal heritage. Like if you're German and you come over to the United States, you have to be American or like you're white now and try to like fit in, right? And so that's what I thought was kind of supposed to be the allegory is that because we take so much from the environment, predominantly like white supremacy and white culture, which really isn't one, it's just all about sameness, which then makes you lose hope and then like makes you lose dreams. That's what I was thinking. And because the indigenous people are still tied closely to the environment and to nature, they're tied closely to each other and to each other's culture. They still have the ability to dream, which is the ability to like hope and then see a future, versus, you can't eat money. So that's my thoughts on that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is probably what confused me most throughout the story. It's like, why them? As Grace was talking, though, I do think perhaps if we're to look at the environmental change and the climate change throughout the story, I know just throughout history, Indigenous people have had such a close relationship and respect for nature, while a lot of other people not so much. So perhaps that respect for nature is what saved them. Although I don't really see a connection between nature and dreams. But I guess that's something. Um, the book kind of reminded me a little bit of a movie. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it. It's called Blood Quantum. It's a horror movie, so it's not like too much like this novel, but similar kind of world. There's a zombie apocalypse, and the only people who are immune from it are the indigenous people. And it is because they were so good to the environment that they became immune to whatever airborne illness is spreading this zombie infection. Um, but there's a line in the movie where one of the characters says, "What makes us think that we're immune? Perhaps just the earth forgot about us." Um, so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would have really loved Cherie Dimaline to kind of delve into exactly why the Indigenous people are immune from this dream loss thing, but that's all I can come up with. Does anybody else want to tackle that before we move on?
Yeah, to me that was also confusing. I wish there was more about it. I do agree with both of you, Grace and Jonathan, about like the connection to nature, and then maybe to like right to expand on that, maybe the lives that people were living in these like dense cities, which I love density and I think it's like good for the environment, but maybe like this disconnection from nature that people were experiencing. And I think that maybe it was at the very beginning of the book, or maybe more towards the middle, how it talked about just people fleeing the cities. And right when we hear about Wab's story and how she described the city that she was living in, it just seems hopeless and like super depressive. So maybe that was also like what made people not dream anymore. And it metaphorically makes sense, right? If people are just so focused on surviving and on everything just being bad that they can't see or hope for something better. But realistically and not metaphorically, I don't know. I don't know what would have caused that.
I think for me, if I'm thinking about it, when you think about dreaming, right, you think about like good things. Like maybe if you want like a picket fence or like a cat, a dog, money, clothes, I don't know. So it's like when you're dreaming, you're like thinking about something good or great that you could want. But maybe for them, maybe they lost hope for dreaming because maybe they didn't see anything better or anything possible for them to dream of. I mean, they would have like certain things they would dream about, but they didn't go into detail too much about the dreams for me to say, okay, well, they dreamt about this. I think Meek may have had a dream or two, and I could be wrong, but I feel like maybe they didn't have any hope or nothing to maybe look forward to in regards to dreaming. I don't know. I think that's the best I could say. Maybe they weren't hopeful in regards to seeing their lives or their circumstances outside of what they were currently in. Because I think that when you dream, you have to kind of see yourself beyond whatever circumstance or whatever situation you're in. You have to like look way past it for you to dream. And then it's a whole nother thing to like actually chase the dream, go after the dream, whatever it could possibly be. But I feel like a dream could be small, it could be big, but ultimately, did or were they hopeful enough to possibly see themselves, beyond the circumstances that they were in to maybe dream, I would say.
Sorry, also something else that I wanted to say is that like in connection to dreaming and like Minerva and then Isaac, that it wasn't just that they were dreaming, right, but that they were dreaming in Cree, that they were like dreaming in that indigenous language, that was like what was the secret weapon of like destroying the system. So I wonder like what that connection as well was, again, with like the preservation of the culture, that it was more about like you're dreaming in this like in this lost language, in this language that like they're trying to take away. So I wanted to know more about that too. Like, what is the plan now? Are they gonna have Isaac be taken by the recruiter so that he can blow up all of the houses? I really want to know more about what's next.
Okay, now I want to talk about what is perhaps one of the more puzzling or frustrating lines of the book. Um, there is a part where Miguan is telling everyone in the group about what started all of this, right? And he says something like, try your best to be compassionate or to empathize with the recruiters because we're all just trying to survive. And then Frenchie surmises that to mean like surmises it to mean that the indigenous and the recruiters or the white people are not that different. Um, what do you guys think of that? And I guess, do you take that line to mean that we are supposed to feel bad for the recruiters?
I don't know about feeling bad. I thought that was just a line in the book to try to say like we're all human beings and recruiters need to stop being racist. I don't know. I kind of thought it was mostly supposed to be more of like a humanity line. But it was a little confusing, and maybe it's just because it was supposed to kind of represent Frenchie trying to understand like how the society is being run. Um, and I was also kind of confused with that line, and I don't think we were meant to feel bad, but I don't think the intent of that line came through.
Yeah, I don't think we were supposed to feel bad either. I think to me it was more of a like maybe talking about what people are driven to protect themselves and their own, right? Like we all would like to think that we would never do bad things or that we would never betray people. But at the end of the day, right, your I guess your instincts kick in sometimes so that you protect yourself. And maybe Meg was also saying that for when they have to kill recruiters, right? That like you think that you would never kill someone, but to protect, your family, you would. And I think maybe he was both saying that out of his own guilt of losing Isaac, um, but also more generally as to like the world has driven people to be like this, maybe rather than people are inherently like this, and maybe even trying to showcase that their group has to have empathy because otherwise they're just as bad as the recruiters who only see them as animals or as like products. So maybe he was trying to say that, right? Like, regardless of like, or maybe not regardless, but like, in spite of what the recruiters are doing, we have to remember that they are just people and that we can't just look at them how they look at, that group that they were, that was there.
I will say that reading that, I thought, oh, here we go with this concept of there's not really there's not really bad people or people are not evil, which I think is total crap. There are people who are evil. There are people who get off on hurting other people. There are people who want to suppress and oppress other people. We live in this world. So this whole concept of, having, I think, yes, have humanity. Absolutely. Because that's really what it's about, having humanity. But at the same time, we do live in a society that gets off of hurting and suppressing people. Because if that was the case, we'd have a much better world. So in many ways, and it's kind of like, and when I read that, I actually, I was thinking, I had thought about the whole thing about with, the Civil Rights Act, the little bit you get in school and this whole thing, a little turning the other cheek and all this kind of crap. And so it's like I can get wanting to see the individual, trying to see the individual as a human. This is a human being, but this is a human being who is literally snatching people off the streets so they can have dreams. What the F? Okay, seriously, I don't even understand how that makes sense and why that is appropriate, and that you can even try to make that into oh, don't look at them as bad people or whatever. I don't know. But that's kind of what I thought when I read that was that. I was like, well, I'm not one of those people, so let's move on. So
I'll say if it was meant to make or try to make us feel bad, I'm gonna say I didn't feel any type of way. Then I'm gonna just leave it there.
Oh, yeah, basically what everyone said. Um, and basically touching on what I'm pretty sure what Jonathan said. Like they didn't really expound on what dreaming or what not having the ability to dream did. So when they brought this up, I was like, okay, but why? Like, there wasn't really much to go on. Like the entire story, all we see are like the recruiters doing evil shit. And it's like, um, everyone does things for survival, but is dreaming really that bad? Like, what's going on? Are they dying because they can't dream? I didn't get that part, but yeah. Um, like the intent thing, they were going for like everyone's doing what they can to survive, the gray morality type thing. I feel like if they added some way or some glimpse into like a good recruiter somehow or some way, then maybe they could have supplemented the idea, but no. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still kind of thinking about what exactly that portion of the story is meant to evoke in us as a reader. Um, I guess in general, sure, I can agree with the blanket statement that we all are doing what we can in the pursuit of survival. Sure, I agree with that. But I think that if your pursuit of survival needs to include genocide, needs to include displacing people, needs to include oppression, I can't sympathize with that because there's always another way. Even in the story, Miquon tells the group that before the recruiters began to literally snatch indigenous people from the street, they actually used to meet with them and their tribes and like try to collaborate. And they were people who were quite willing, indigenous people who were quite willing to help with this dream research. But again, the oppressors became too violent and became too greedy with how much marrow they wanted to take from people. And that is kind of what led to this broken relationship between the indigenous and the recruiters. So again, there's always another way. And to do it this way is just not appropriate. Yeah, yeah. I guess I'll just say, never try to get me to sympathize with an oppressor. It'll never happen. Sorry, my empathy does not go that deep. So now I'm curious, did you guys notice an importance in the use of stories in this book? Miguan telling people these stories. And I'm curious, do you agree with Miguan saying that certain younger aged people are not appropriate for hearing these stories?
I would say I connected to a lot, because I think about just in in my family that, you know, stories that are told, things I remember as a child, and then I hear, you know, my mom talk about it, and I'm like, I don't remember it that way. But in the sense of having those stories passed down to connect, to keep the connection. And I think it was um I forgot. I think at least two people have mentioned about the fact that, you know, how they dreamed in Cree, and how those things are important of keeping your culture and keeping your keeping those things a part of who you are. And so I definitely think those things are very important. And when you don't savor those things, you don't keep those things, then you do lose. You lose a piece of your, you know, of your culture. You lose a piece of your family history, and then it's just not there anymore. Because if those stories aren't told, or aren't kept accurately, or even put as an emphasis that that's important, then it is very much just lost.
I would say I would definitely agree with Vanita. I really enjoy the story times because to me it kind of reminded me of like when your grandparents tell you stories or your older aunts, they give you kind of like family history and just stories about things that happened prior to you being born. It kind of reminded me of that. So I did enjoy the story times, and plus I do feel like we learned a little bit more about some of the characters. But it just reminded me of like an old family member just giving you some wisdom, passing along some knowledge, and also just sharing some of your history that I feel like we need to keep, our history alive, or just to know our roots and what goes on with us, outside of what we can remember. So I did enjoy the story times for sure.
Yeah, I also enjoy the storytelling aspect, and I do think it's so important to so many different cultures, as people have said. And one of the parts that I liked too of the book was that once they were, in that little community, that an important thing that the community was doing was keeping those stories alive and trying to document and gather stories from everyone. And it was interesting, right, that I think it was Frenchie that was saying how they were really struggling to make sure that the stories that they were writing down and passing weren't just stories that they were making up. So really the importance of keeping true to the history that people were trying to tell. And then for the other part of your question, Johnathan, about whether or not certain stories are appropriate to tell to certain ages, honestly, I don't know, but I definitely saw like the logic behind Meg, and why he thought that not telling like the younger kids what was really happening made sense, because it can really impact then how the kids were gonna see themselves, right? They thought that other people outside of this group really only cared about them or saw them as a product of their bone marrow, then maybe that's all that they would see about themselves. So I definitely understood them not trying to have the kids' self-worth be impacted by how other people saw them. And it's also just terrifying. So I definitely get like not wanting to make the kids so scared that they would be, maybe just like too frozen in fear to do anything. So I think that
So, like, I agree that certain stories or stuff should be reserved for, um, like, I don't know, certain times or sometimes when people are older. Like, experience and growth is so vital in taking away the right things from a story. Because, like, I remember learning about the rapture when I was a child, right? Like, and I was so scared shitless. Like, I was having nightmares because it's such a scary concept to me. Like, only a very minuscule amount of people get to go to heaven. And if you're not one of them, like, then good luck. You're gonna suffer for all eternity. And then when you die, you're gonna suffer again. Like that is so scary. Like I had nightmares. Oh, and there's like also family tea. Like when you're younger, you're not really privy to that. So when you get older and you start understanding family dynamics and like, oh, so that's why that certain family member was acting that way, or that's why um um they're treating that family member like that certain way. Um, and they just want to like kind of shield you or like kind of protect that or not really skew your worldview yet or as of that moment. Because like if you get into it, you'll have to get into it. Um, but other than that, like the way the story served in or the way that the story was in the novel. I enjoyed it. Like, it was a way to like world build, and I liked how everyone had to tell their own story, and you couldn't really tell it for them. Yeah.
Yeah, like you all said, I definitely saw an importance of the stories and of storytelling. Like many of you have mentioned, it is quite literally passing down culture through each generation. And obviously, that's a good thing. Now, with believing that certain people are too young, I'm not sure if I agree. Like, Saul, what you were getting at about telling people the harsh realities, or like Arian, you were saying sometimes scary realities of life, and steal a certain childlike wonder from those who are too young. And sure, I can understand wanting to protect that, but also when you're living in a dystopian world, a scary world, as these characters are, I don't know. I kind of think it is important to be realistic with these children because at any minute a recruiter can come and steal any one of you, if not all of you. So I don't know. And then, like Vanita, you were getting at earlier about learning about civil rights in school. Like I remember there are certain elements of civil rights or slavery that we learned about in middle school or high school that I guess was considered to be age appropriate. And then you think you know everything, and then if you pursue higher education, you learn a hell of a lot more. And then you realize you only learned maybe 5% of the overall history. And I do think that is very dangerous because who's to say you're ever going to pursue higher education, right? So you have a lot of people walking around thinking they know everything, but you only know such a small amount. Um, so yeah, I think that's dangerous, but again, I can understand wanting to protect a child. I'm not a parent, and perhaps it's good because I would tell my children everything. But I believe it was a couple of you mentioned like family, history and family culture. Uh, yeah, like I remember with my grandmother, like sometimes I consider it, I guess I should say, I used to consider it boring when I was younger, when she would tell me like certain things about our family, certain things about her parents, her grandparents, who obviously I have never met because they're not alive anymore. Um, and I would always question, like, why is she always telling me these things? And she would say the same thing or tell the same story more than once. And then one day she told me, I'm telling you so you remember, because one day I will forget as I get older. Um, so yeah, I guess that kind of also encapsulates the use of story and the importance of stories in this book. Um, yeah. And I'm curious, what significance do you see in Frenchie choosing to keep his hair long as opposed to cutting it like I think every other male in the group does?
Right. I'm not sure about um his indigenous like culture, because there was a few different tribes and different nations that were represented by each person. But I do know that long hair is sacred for some, and so I'm not sure if it was just the differences in the different nations and tribes that were represented based on like long hair or not. And that's also the big significance of cutting his hair whenever died and gave it to her. Like that's something that's like significant that you do whenever you lose a loved one. So I think it might have been one to try to, that was his way of staying tied in and close to his culture, um, and being able to feel close to his family that wasn't around anymore. And also as a way to like give him something, to hold on to, because he didn't have like language and things like that, or like his drums or like the sweet grass and all the things that we found, that or sweat lodge and things like that were like really important. Um, yeah, so that was my thinking on Frenchie's hair.
My opinion on Frenchie cutting his hair, most times I know with women, when you cut your hair off, it's like you want a new change, a new beginning, a new life, just a fresh start. So I would think that if I had to equate it to anything, I would say most times when people are cutting their hair, it's usually like change and a fresh start. So maybe, um, shoot, that makes me think he didn't cut his hair. So then I don't know why he didn't cut his hair. I'm not very sure. I can't think then why he would keep the hair. Most times people usually cut their hair because they want a change. So I'm not sure now that I'm thinking about it why Frenchie didn't cut his hair.
I think there was like a point in the book where um he prided himself on having the longest hair out of anyone in the group, especially Derek, I think that was his name. Um, so when Grace brought up that in some tribes that hair is sacred, I think he really took that aspect to heart. Um, that's all I could really think of on why he decided not to cut his hair, but yeah.
Yeah, to me, it was also tied to their indigeneity. Um, and I think right they were all so like everybody in the group was so desperate for any connection at all to their culture with like how much they like were savoring like words that Minerva was teaching them, and I think like the hair itself is also like a symbol of their culture and like having that connection with that. And I thought, right, it also like almost made me cry when like um, Rose cut her hair after Minerva died. Like that was really impactful as a sign of like respect, but also like a sign of loss. Because I think that hair, and I'm not sure if this like is an indigenous thing. I'm not sure why indigenous people like the significance behind that, but I do know that your hair carries a lot of memories with you. So just a matter of like this being a symbol of like people's whole lives as they've like grown their hair and like never cut their hair, and like having that be a reminder of like the past that they have. So I thought that was really powerful. I also just thought it was so funny that French was like competing with Derek about having the longest hair and like having this own internal battle of being like, oh, I'm like more indigenous or like better than you because I have longer hair. I thought that was really funny, and again showing like that French is just a teenager and like immature himself. I just thought that was so funny every time he would bring that up.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure either. I know, like Grace, you mentioned in indigenous cultures, or at least some of them, long hair is a very sacred and cherished thing. So there's that. I'm not sure. I believe that Frenchie was he Métis, I believe. I'm not sure if that exists in Métis culture or not, but if it does, then of course there's that. Um, Also, like Sierra, you were mentioning hair oftentimes holding a lot of memories and sometimes trauma. And then we notice how he only cuts his hair after Minerva dies. And he does it kind of in a solidarity with Rose, um, which I found interesting. I would have loved to have that touched on a little bit more, but unfortunately, we don't really talk about it much. Um, Also, I know in art, at least, I'm not sure if it's a cultural thing as well, if you ever see a painting of a man with long hair, it's meant to indicate his age. Usually, long hair is only appropriate for long hair is only appropriate for younger men. Whereas as you age into your adulthood, your manhood, you were expected to cut your hair. And of course, as you age even more, your hair will eventually stop growing, most likely. So I guess throughout French's journey, and then as we leave him, I believe he's what, 17 or so, and he's stepping into his maturity. I guess that's to signify that he's made it to an adult. Um, I don't know. Unfortunately, there's so little to go with based on what's in the book, but that's all I can come up with. Um, Now, I guess let's talk about, I guess, the juicier part of the book. What did you guys make of the relationship between Frenchie and Rose?
I think I had mentioned how that, in this world that still quote unquote normal things happen. So having these two teenagers or young people like each other and connect and and find a bond with each other. I have to say, because there was one part in the book that I really found really touching, but also kind of made me laugh, was when they ended up at that house and they were all at one time in separate rooms, I think, and then they ended up all in the room with Rose and Frenchie. So yeah, so I actually like that because again, especially when you're going through, hard situations, to have someone to be able to um to depend on and have someone that you can, feel like that you're kind of shouldering this together with. So I like that. Like I said, I thought it was also like, oh well, even in this dystopian world, you can still have two people, find each other and possibly fall in love.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was just like funny and cute and a little bit like um just remembering being a teenager and then having all those feelings. You're like, what am I doing with my feelings? And then trying to navigate all that with like the reality of like how they're living. I thought was really, yeah, like being a human is still going to happen regardless of the situation, that you're in. And I remember I laughed whenever the part where he was like, please don't let her be my relative or like be my cousin. And then she wasn't. He was like, thank God. 'Cause it's really funny. So for the at least San Carlos Apache people, they do that. And I laughed because I just thought it was so funny. What they do is you take on your mother's clan, and so you have to ask like, hey, what clan are you to make sure that you're not going to date anybody that you're related to because it's like a super big taboo to do that. So and yeah, so I have a friend of mine and he would say anytime that he went on a date or thought someone was cute, he would be like, who's your clan? And be like, dang it, and then have to like move on with his life or something. So I just thought that was really, really funny and yeah, just relatable.
I think that I like their relationship. I think that it was nice that they had each other to kind of be there for one another while they were experiencing, going through all of these different things throughout the course of life. So I think that their relationship, it was definitely cute puppy love, is what I would say. It definitely was cute, I would say for sure.
Um, yeah, um, let's keep it cute. I thought that it was cute. Yeah.
Yeah, I think their relationship, yes, it was cute, but I think primarily it kind of served to remind us that we're reading a YA novel. I think without the romantic element, it's pretty easy to forget this book is meant to be YA because there are so many non-teenage characters throughout it. Um, so yeah, I did find the relationship to be a little bit frustrating simply because Frenchie was so immature at certain parts. I remember Grace at the top of our discussion, you said you were like rolling your eyes when Frenchie was jealous of Derek. Yeah, totally the same. I was also a bit frustrated that he like wasn't willing to like tell tell Rose or just admit to Rose that he likes her back because she obviously likes him. Um, and yeah, it's like he spends so much time pouting when it's like, okay, if you like her and you don't want her to hook up with this Derek guy, like maybe say something. I mean, she already kind of put the moves on you in the hotel. So obviously she thinks you're more than a friend, right? But yeah, whatever. They're teens. I'm an adult. We obviously communicate differently. um, okay, I guess to kind of get to the end a little bit, what did you guys think of the book's ending?
I really like the ending and having it end in a positive note. Um, I read like the book specifically, and I remember that it was when they were talking about going and saving Minerva that I had like such a small sliver of the book left that I was like, how, what's gonna happen in these like next 30 pages or so. Um, so I was very happy that like they found Isaac and reconnected with Isaac. Um, and I didn't make the connect. I did make the connection that it was Isaac before he said that it was Isaac, but I made it like 3 seconds beforehand. Uh, and I like was so happy that that was happening, and probably like the same excitement that Frenchie felt in that second. So I really like the ending, and I think maybe because I like Mig so much, he was like a character I was really rooting for. That I was happy that that ended positive for him specifically too.
Yeah, I agree with Saul. I really loved the ending. Because it did end on like a hopeful note, and I wasn't expecting that at all. I was not expecting Isaac to be alive at all. Um, and I think that was just a good note to end on that, you know, the dad being alive was also unexpected, but I was like, we're not going to get two of them, so I think we're not going to get two happy reunions out of this. And I was just so happy for Meg and Isaac because they seemed like they were so in love, and their story about how they got separated was like so sad because Isaac was such a nice sweetie. And yeah, so I really felt like it really, I don't even know how I would have ended it differently. They just give you hope and that maybe they can destroy the dream machines, and even if not, at least they have each other again. So
I did enjoy how the book ended, actually. I enjoyed the fact that Isaac came back. Like, I really enjoyed that part. And I also enjoyed them finding Minerva and also just her whole chapter, like her singing. And, I think that was her gift, I believe, as far as her like singing. I don't know if you guys remember the Miracle of Minerva when she sung and, like, I think caused the fire and all of those things. That was a nice chapter that they were able to get her. And I was happy that Frenchie found his dad. I really enjoyed like those two, guys coming together in the end. I did like two of his father figures. I did like that. And I just really loved that Isaac came back. Like I felt like, of course, I'm always like dreaming into the next book. I'm like, what if Isaac comes back? Because I believe he was at the camp, I believe the schools. So what if he comes back and he just tells them about all of the things that happened and maybe they somehow, I don't know, make it better, or I don't know. I'm hoping maybe make it better based off of his spirit experience. Maybe he can talk about it a little bit more with him or something. Just go into detail about what exactly happened. Where were you all of these years? So I would say that I definitely did enjoy the end of the book, I must say.
Yes, agree. I liked that Isaac and Miguan found each other. At the end, I liked that Frenchie found his dad was with him. I will say that I was laughing a little bit when Grace said, "Oh, there's no way we're gonna have two happy endings." Because I actually just read a book where I was actually just saying that same thing. Like, man, we couldn't have two happy endings. But yeah, so I agree with everyone. I was glad about those things, but I did think I did think that okay, we're ending on a good note on this book. I wonder if the next books are just pure torture. So I will say I did think that.
I really liked Migwan as a character. Like by the end of the story, I was more invested in him than any other character. Um, Now, I really do love a good romance story, so it was easily no, it was probably my favorite aspect of the book, or like my favorite moment of the book. Like, come on now, it was so cute. Um, anyway, um, with Minerva, yeah, I really liked that part as well. Like, wow. Um, yeah, like, um, I did not expect that from her. So it was a delight to see her given um, some power since she was um portrayed as weak or so weak or like kind of slowing the group down in most of the story. And I agree with everyone else. Like I like the hopeful note or the at the end and like, the small cute little reunions. Um, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you all in thinking that the ending in regards to Miguan and Isaac was very cute. Yeah, it was. But I also found the ending to be a little bit confusing. We know that Minerva, like Sierra was saying, Minerva was able to take down the school by singing. Um, what confused me is whether or not Minerva has some sort of magical powers, or is the power just that she remembers so much about her culture? Because I remember that um, when the troop loses her, and of course the troop where Frenchie's father was, and then Frenchie's group, they come together as one. They mention that they hope to train other people to kind of also have the ability that Minerva had. Um, but then we talk about when we meet Isaac, and Isaac knows so much of the Cree language, it's hinted that he probably also has the same powers. So I don't know. That really confused me. I feel like that wasn't explained enough. Is it magic or is it just knowledge? Um, yeah, and Grace, like you're saying, you thought it was Minerva's dreams that broke the machine. I don't think so. It seemed like it was the singing, and the singing in the language is what awakened the ancestors who were buried under where the recruiter center was built, and that is what brought the school down. Um, Again, I could be wrong on that because it's not explained that well. So I could be very wrong, but I believe that's what we're meant to take away from that. Um, so yeah. And I guess final thought on Miguan and Isaac is like, I know that tent is going to be rocking that night, honey, after like what, 5 or so years of not seeing one another. I do not want to be anywhere near that area. um, Okay, what did you guys think of the found family element in this story?
I loved it, and I thought it was kind of well, I guess maybe that would be hopeful thinking that that's exactly what would happen in times such as is that you really end up having a found family, especially with families getting separated and things like that. So I really love that, and especially like I said, when that part in the book when they all ended up in the same room together, and it was just kind of that whole connection of they didn't want to be apart, even though they had this opportunity to sleep in beds or not have to sleep on the ground or whatever. So yeah, I like that a lot. I like that whole concept.
I actually liked the family concept of the book. It had a quote in the book that said, "We made a family by choice, not by blood." So I feel like sometimes, family doesn't necessarily have to be blood. It's just the people who have been there for you, just throughout the course of life. Doesn't have to be blood. But I feel like they've done a great job at creating their own family. It's just based off of them, you know, just being, I guess, having common, backgrounds and things of that nature, or just different struggles, or just knowing what it is to, I guess, be in the woods, in the wilderness, and trying to survive. So I think that made them family, just having, I guess, a common agenda or, so like I said, it doesn't always mean that family has to be blood. So I did enjoy that family, I guess, culture and dynamic of the book.
Yeah, I like that fact as well. I really like that, like we had these happy and I think that I also like the conflict that aspect on as well. So this is my blood
Sorry, Soul, your
family.
mic is cutting out again.
Oh no, hold on, let me see. Can you
That's
hear me better
better.
now?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Yeah, because I was saying that I like the conflict that it brought up for Frenchie of like this is my blood family, but then I have this other group of people who are also now my family, and what am I gonna do, right? Am I gonna leave with them again, or am I gonna stay with my dad? So I did like that conflict as well that Frenchie had, and I like the story that his dad told him. After when Rose left and Frenchie wanted to follow her,
It's happening again.
no. All right. Well, that's all I have to say. So I'll let somebody else go.
Yeah, so I agree. I really liked the conflict of found family versus like the dad, like blood relation family, and how, like that found family can be a stronger connection because of all of the hardships that they went through together and all of the just like the bonding and the rituals that they developed by traveling together so frequently. So, yeah, I really loved it, and I feel like it felt really, I don't know, natural and also then hopeful for the kind of environment that they had to struggle with. And then being able to find each other through all the hardships, and then you found out what happened to each individual person's story throughout. So, yeah, I really love the found family, and then the conflict of blood relation versus found family, and like what do I do now? So.
Yeah, I agree with you all. I loved the element of found family. This has actually come up in like seemingly just about every book we've read because I think so many queer novels involve some kind of element of found family because like so many of our lives, uh, if your biological family is not necessarily what you consider to be, uh, you don't consider yourself close to them or you don't have much contact with them, we all have to at some point find our own family. Um, but I mean, I guess the same thing happens with straight people too. So that's good. And like you all were mentioning, I found it interesting how we're constantly playing with this definition of family. Like, what exactly is family? Because at one point, Frenchie misses his biological family, his mother, his father, and his brother, but he kind of, I don't want to say gets over it, but he settles with the idea that this group that he's with now is his new family. But then when they joined forces, he's kind of torn between, okay, my father is my biological family, Miguan and everyone else are my found family, but then there's Rose who is leaving. Rose is also my family. So do I stay with my father, biological family, my found family, or do I go with someone who I see a family with, Rose? Um, I thought that was super cool, like constantly changing the definition of what family is and what that looks like. and I guess which family you're willing to prioritize. I don't know. Okay, now let's get to the question I was saving for so long. I'm curious why you guys all think the book was banned.
I'm shocked to learn this information. I would have no idea why this book could be banned. Um, I don't know. I cannot, maybe I'm stumped if I'm going to be completely honest. I would have no idea why they were banning this book.
Kind of like, I feel like, like I said in the Discord, anytime you have a banned book, it's usually because gay people exist and people of color exist, and it decenters white people and it centers people of color and their struggles with white people. And then everyone goes, not in my house, and then try to ban a book. Kind of like how, like, that really beautiful children's book, like Love Your Hair, about black hair has been banned in schools and other places, just because white supremacy, and we don't want people to have different perspectives about anything. So, yeah, kind of like I read the Monk and Robot series. They're super cute and they're really short novellas and they like warm my little heart, and they've been banned because the main character is non-binary. So, I mean, that's usually the case, I think. So, I think To Kill a Mockingbird has also tried to been banned before, so that would be my guess.
Hopefully I don't cut out too much, but yeah, I agree with Grace that this book is making people confront the history of Indigenous people, and we kind of talked about how everything that's happening to uh, the characters has already happened to Indigenous people, and I think that people don't want to have those conversations because then they have to address the historical impact of that, and perhaps also uh their own why how they have themselves contributed to that or continue to contribute to what's going on in the world. So I do think that it's because of that, and mostly because this is intended to be like a young adult novel, that it's like, oh, we have to keep those ideas away from the youth. I also think oftentimes these books are right. I think it's ironic that this book is being banned because it's all right. Like the very ending of it talks about how like dreaming is what's keeping people alive. Like we have to keep this dream going. But by banning this book, it's actively trying to keep that dream from going on. So it's very much like we have to make sure that the kids don't get any ideas about the ways that they could potentially make this world better or address the wrongs that have been done in the past.
I'll say that I had when I thought about the whole thing about this book being banned, I did think, okay, someone is really reading into everything and finding something wrong with everything, to ban this book. However, just as Grace said, it's anytime I don't know, it's kind of I find it the oxymoron really, in the sense that you have individuals, or what I've come across, individuals saying, oh, my child is not going to be have to deal with that. My child shouldn't have to be felt not to be made uncomfortable, but it's totally all right for your kid to be uncomfortable and to feel like they don't belong and all of this. Yet these can be the same individuals who will have mass have toxic males around them and have them in really unhealthy situations. So it's kind of like, okay, you're okay with that, but you're not okay with this. So those things always confuse me. I'm always confused by those things, but I do know, as my grandfather used to say to me all the time, you think about things way different than other people do. So I just live with that concept because I don't understand the idea of people not really have introspection. I don't know how I know how people, why look at yourself and try to find something wrong with yourself. Not so much finding wrong with yourself, but if you're really being honest, because there is no such thing as perfection, but knowing there's always ways that you can be better and do better.
Where were you guys? Sorry.
So I was just answering your question about why was this book banned. I was just saying after reading it, I was just thinking someone had to really be looking to find a reason to ban this book. But yeah, so that was really my thing. I was just, man, someone really has to be thinking really hard to be like, yeah, let's put this on ban. But of course, anytime someone feels uncomfortable, there's always this, whole thing of, okay, we're not going to feel uncomfortable, but you can feel uncomfortable. It's always that whole concept.
Okay, well, you guys are all in the right ballpark. There's two things you guys are missing. One thing is something Grace mentioned earlier. Grace, do you want to guess what it was before I tell you guys?
Was it the white person quote in the beginning of the book?
No.
I don't know. Was it two gay people being married and being happily in love?
No.
Oh.
Do you give up?
No, I like guessing. One more time. One more. I'm gonna guess.
Okay.
The decentering of white people? It was just.
No.
All right, I give up.
So there are four primary reasons why the book was banned. One, it inappropriately explores human sexuality. Two, the book is considered to be anti-white. Three, the book sexualizes minors. That is in reference to the scene with Rose and Frenchie in the hotel bed. And four, Grace, I was hoping you get it, but the book is considered to be anti-Catholic.
Aha!
Yeah. So knowing this now, what do you guys all make of that? And do you think any of that is valid?
Because 17-year-olds never want to kiss other 17-year-olds. That's not real. Obviously, you don't want to kiss anybody until you're 18.
It's until you're married, Grace.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I forgot. They weren't married in a Catholic church. I forgot.
Yeah, I don't see any of that being valid at all. I believe a few of you mentioned now that like anytime we talk about this book does not take place in the US, so I won't say US history, but we talk about history in general, we talk about oppressed people, these people oftentimes being people of color. And we tell the truth and really delve into like what happened and what they've done to other people to kind of get where they are today. That is always seen as being anti-white. And it's like, I do not think that white people and oppression or white people and genocide are synonymous, but obviously white people do. And that is my main concern. Like, why do you guys think that those two things are the same? Also, yeah, sexualizing minors, I agree. Hate to break it to a lot of parents, but your children do have certain feelings. Your children do develop crushes. Your children do have urges. That is very natural. It's very normal. Um, and it's funny because as a nurse in the ER, I oftentimes do get parents who like are concerned about their children's like sex lives and whatnot. And I have to pretty much tell them like, hey, look, it's totally natural. Just encourage your children to be safe. That's all I can really tell you. I'm not going to tell your son to stop masturbating. I'm not going to tell your daughter she can't have a boyfriend. I'm not doing that. But whatever. Okay, now, since our main character is straight, but in case you guys did not know, Cherie Dimaline is not straight. She's bisexual. So our author is not. Would you consider this to be a queer story?
I
Oh, go ahead, Vanessa.
I was just gonna say I don't know if I would say it's a queer story. I think I one of the things I did like about the book was that you had all these different people, not so much maybe like culturally, but because of things that had happened to them, you had, like I said, Meg and Isaac, okay, they're a gay couple, but they're, they had all had experiences that, were different and as what they call it, the coming out story. And so, I found that, but I don't know if I would, if I read this, what I would think it was, a queer story. No, I wouldn't have thought that at all.
Yeah, I agree with Vinny. I would say it's not a queer story. It's an indigenous story with indigenous queer people in it, is how it read to me, for sure.
Okay, yeah, at first I was like, yeah, it is a queer story, but then I realized now that that's not like the right focus. So yeah, now I agree with um I don't think it's a queer story, but it does have queer aspects.
Yeah, at first I said no, it's not a queer story. But I did read a few reviews of people who believe it is. And their primary reasoning for that is that um, throughout the story, we see several different heteronormative gender rules or gender norms being broken, and that itself is queer. I remember we had a very similar conversation when we read Black Queer Hoe, and we talked about what exactly queerness is. And excuse me. Um, and um, and yeah, I mean, queerness is to reject a lot of the heteronormativity that we have in society. Now, I'm not willing to go as far as to say a straight relationship can be queer, but I mean, knowing that, perhaps it can be. Any thoughts on that from you guys?
In a dystopian world, anything's possible. So I don't know. I think that's an interesting take about gender norms. But I feel like the patriarchy does kind of fall apart when you're fighting for your life, and it doesn't really matter. Everyone has to step up. So, um, I mean, having gender norms while you're fighting for your life would be incredibly weird. Um, yeah, but I think that is something to think about and to contemplate.
Yeah, I agree. Although with the gender norms thing, I do have to push back a little bit. While they're not enforced throughout their group, I don't believe that Miguan's ever really enforces any sort of gender norm or gender role. I will say that Frenchie tries to. There are certain times where he doesn't want Rose to be a part of their hunting or their adventures because he's worried about her getting hurt, almost saying that she's not strong enough to kind of run with the boys. But he's also able to admit that like she's a better hunter and a better shot than he is. So I don't know. There's that. But yeah. Now, as Vanita has, sorry, not Vanita, Vanita, I apologize, has said, this book is the first in a series. Do we want to keep reading or do we want to end the book here?
Here, please.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind ending here, but I'm open, I guess.
Oh my goodness, what did I miss? I'm sorry, guys. I had my speaker down. I didn't know.
Oh, we were just asking if we wanted to read any more in the series or if we were good stopping with this book.
Oh, I can stop with this book right here. This one here, I can stop with this one for sure.
What about you, Vanita? Any desire to keep going or are you good too?
Oh no, I have no desire to keep going. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you all say that because I was going to have to say, if you want to keep reading, unfortunately, we will not be doing that because I don't want to read anymore. I'm sorry. So we're going to be stopping here.
Does you love dystopian YA novels? Why would you want to stop here?
Oh, hell no. No, no, no. That'd be my personal hell. All dystopian, all YA. No, no way. Okay. Before we move on to discuss next month's books and then a couple of announcements. Does anyone have anything they want to say on this book? Questions, comments, characters you want to talk about, plot lines you want to talk about, anything? Going once, going twice. Okay, forever hold your peace. Okay, next month is October, obviously. So naturally, we'll be reading some spooky themed books, some horror books. As always, I have two options pulled. Give me just a sec. I will post the links to the descriptions in the chat. Now, I have to say that one of the books, this first one, The House of Hunger, is, from my understanding, a more gory and I guess scary horror book. The second one, Feast While You Can, is a bit more chill. So before you make your choice, if you're someone who is absolutely afraid of gore, perhaps do not choose House of Hunger. I will also say that one of these books I did already go ahead and pick up my library copy. So I am hoping you guys pick the one that I want. I won't tell you which one it is, but if you know me, it's probably pretty obvious. Okay, read those. Let me know what you guys think. Okay, so I see Grace mentioning wanting feast while you can. Anyone else have any strong opinions? Either way. Okay. Um, since Grace, you mentioned Feast While You Can, we'll go ahead and read that one. Unfortunately, that is not the one I was leaning towards, so I will have to make the trek back to my library to return House of Hunger, but that's okay. Um, Now, Benita, I know you mentioned, of course, not liking scary books, and I totally understand if you want to skip next month, but from my understanding, Feast While You Can is not really horror at all. It's more of like a romance sort of drama. No pressure, but if that is something you're more comfortable with, then maybe you want to take a chance on that. Again, up to you. Um, so again, I was thinking, as always, last Sunday of the month, which would be October 26th at 12 p.m. Does that work for folks, or should we perhaps change the day or time? I see Arian is okay with that. Okay. And what
Yeah,
about you, Grace? You're good?
I'm looking at my calendar and that looks good because that's before I fly to San Francisco. So yeah, it's good.
Oh, you're going to be near me and near Sierra.
Oh, fun. Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
getting revision done with, so I'll be for like a few days and like maybe do some beach time and then toodaloo back home.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Um, okay, so I'll put a stamp for that. Feast While You Can on October 26th at 12. Um, Now, Feast While You Can, from my experience with my library, it's kind of hard to come by. It's has a lot of holds on it. So if you experience a similar struggle, let me know. As always, I do have a PDF copy that I can share with you guys if you have a hard time getting the book as well. Okay, now a couple of announcements. I want to kind of clue you guys in on something I've been mulling over the club doing for some time now. I would really love for us to, hopefully at the end of each year, to kind of pick our favorite author of the year and then invite them to come talk to us. And we can kind of ask them questions, talk about the book with them, fangirl out, all that kind of stuff. Um, I'm curious what you guys think of that. And I'm curious from your own personal opinions, how would that work best? My issue with it primarily is that when I say end of the year, I'm thinking probably November, December. And I know that might clash with certain people's holiday plans. Now, last Sunday of each month is usually after the major holidays in November and December if you celebrate. But I would suspect we probably would have a bit of a lesser attendance rate. And my other concern is, let's say, for example, we were to invite an author we read in January to a discussion in December. How well would people be able to remember that book and all their thoughts on it to discuss it with the author? Um, so yeah, in general, what are you guys' thoughts on that? Are you guys open to that? Does it sound cool? What do you guys think?
That sounds super fun. I would like that. I think that sounds great.
Oh yeah, I love the idea of that. Um I do get the concern about trying to make sure you're if you read something a while ago and having a discussion with someone about it later. But, that's also, being prepared, getting yourself prepared for those things. So I think it can work out, but I do like that idea of that very much.
That sounds so dope. I'm down and excited.
Good. I'm happy to see that you guys find that interesting. And yes, Hanoka Footman, I was thinking about her, but we shall see. Now, my other concern with it would be is if it's in December, would we also read a book that month and then meet that last Sunday to talk about it? Or would we just kind of cut out that whole month and just have our author discussion? I would also be open to us having the author discussion, let's say, I don't know, second week of the month, and then our book discussion, as always, last Sunday. I'm just not sure if that is asking too much of people. I don't know. Anyone have any ideas on that?
I think I don't know, it might be a little, depending on how people's holidays are, it might be a little,
Sorry, Grace, I'm not sure if you're talking, but I can't hear you.
how about now? No?
Still
I can hear
nothing.
you fine.
Oh, bloop, bloop, bloop. Did you hear that?
Really? Maybe it's just me.
Oh
If
no, I'll type it out and then I'll also just say it.
hmm.
So hold on, I'm gonna type it. It
Give me
might,
just a sec, Grace. Perhaps that's just my end if I'm the only person that can't hear you. Just a second. Okay, sorry, Grace. Can you try talking again for me?
oh,
Yeah, that's better.
okay.
Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was just thinking it might be a little too much just because depending on how people's holidays are. Um,
Mm,
not sure, like for me it probably wouldn't be because I don't have like a big family and I don't really celebrate like too much and it's usually low key. Um, so I would be okay with doing two things, but I don't know if maybe like if Discord is like a poll, if that would be easier to
mm,
age or something like that.
mm.
Or
That makes
maybe
sense.
weeks into the new year to have an author
Mm,
discussion. So we'd have a full year of books. And
mm,
if that's easier, because then the holidays are kind of over with for most folks. I
mhm,
don't
Yeah, I would say the holiday would be hard for me, because I'm already getting wrapped up into my family that I'll be basically living in Indianapolis for the next 2 months. So, um, yeah, that'd be hard for me.
mm,
For me, I would say now I am in California, but I will be going home to Maryland for
mhm,
Thanksgiving. But I definitely can still attend the meeting. Now, will I be able to, am I going to have maybe the time to, I guess, try to find the author? I don't know about
mm,
that part, maybe in such the, the latter part of the year. Now,
mhm,
Christmas and Thanksgiving, I still can attend like a regular book club meeting. But I guess I can just play it by ear. Like if you have something, that you truly want to do, I definitely can play it by ear, but I'm not sure about the book authors part. Also because I'm also in another book club,
mhm,
and I was interested in getting Kennedy Ryan to come and speak at one of our book club meetings. And not to say that every author is like this, but she was, I believe she stopped taking like appearances to speak at book clubs, I believe, after October. She
mhm,
said that she would no longer, be doing, I guess, book readings and things like that due to the holiday. And not to say that that's every author, but maybe that's just like being as though it's a holiday and it's so close together. Um, Either way, I'm still open if you just, let me know.
mhm. Yeah, it all sounds good. Again, everything you guys are saying are things I've already been thinking about. I've been entertaining the idea of doing this for about 2 years now. So I've been thinking about this for about 2 years, and I'm still kind of working on all the kinks on how that would work. My other concern, of course, would be because people join, any time of the year, people join this club. So what if we meet with an author that someone who just joined has not read? Of course, the author chat would be open to anyone who wants to come, but I would just think you probably get more out of it had you read the book. So if we didn't meet in December and only met for the author chat, I would think it would give folks that month to read the book. But yeah, I don't know. Again, heavy emphasis on I'm going to try that out. I cannot promise it's going to happen, and I also cannot promise it'll happen anytime soon. So don't get your hopes up too much, but that is where my mind is going. And I'm also a very determined person. So if I think of something, it's going to happen. I just can't say when. Okay, now lastly, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but I am working on some other stuff for us to have in to kind of close out the year, probably in December, like it was last year. And in order to do that, I will need to know everyone's 2 favorite books of the year. Now, for folks like you, Sierra, who joined and you've only read 2 books with us, I'm not sure if those last 2 books we've read will be your favorites, but you know, I will drop a poll probably on Discord, kind of with a couple of books that I really enjoyed, and I'm going to see which 2 people gravitate towards, and that will dictate this thing I have for us at the end of the year. Also, I need an artist to work with me on this thing. So if anyone here is an artist, if anyone here knows an artist, has an artist friend, family, loved one, let me know. Send me their contact information, and that person and I can talk. Or if it's you, drop into my DMs on Discord and let me know. You and I can talk. I am paying, so let the person know this is a paid position. It's pretty easy, just like a digital artist, I guess a sketch artist, illustrator, whatever. No big thing. It's pretty simple, I guess. It'll all be virtual and digital, so I don't have to actually meet the person in person. Now, I do have one requirement, or I guess 2 requirements. We are a Queers of Color book club, so I do want the artist to be of color and queer. So please do not send me your white, straight stepbrother. Sorry, I'm going to tell him no. And I do want the person to be fairly professional. So please do not send me your 12-year-old niece, okay? I'm sure she's very talented. I'm sure she's the next Michelangelo, but now is not her time to shine. And if I get no one, no pressure, that's totally fine. I will just reach out to the person that I worked with last year. So no pressure, but the opportunity is out there if anyone wants to showcase their art and needs to make some money. Okay, that's it. I'm tired of hearing myself talk and I'm hungry, so let's wrap this up. Okay, before we go, any last minute questions, comments, thoughts about the book, about my announcements, about the club, anything before we sign off?
None from me, Jonathan. Just thank you for all the work you put into it. And it's just always such fun. And I love talking about all the books. So just thank you.
Ditto.
I don't have anything else to say, but thank you guys. Your conversation about the environment, it makes me want to be great and better today. So thank you guys for that.
Of course, you guys are so welcome. I'm so happy to hear how much you guys enjoy these. I obviously do too. And like I've always said, thank you all so much for coming. And your attendance is as important as mine because I can't do this alone. I love hearing my own voice and I love my own opinions, but I do need some kind of someone to bounce off of. So thank you all for coming. Hopefully I can see you all next month on the 26th to discuss Feast While You Can. But until then, or if I don't see you then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. I know holiday seasons can be a bit tough. You can always reach out to me on Discord if you have anything to talk about, or if you're feeling kind of lonely, I'm available. But yeah, take care. And happy Sunday. And of course, for you, Arian, happy Monday.
Thank you. Toodles.
Bye.
Bye.